The woods never felt right after sunset. The air hummed with something unnatural. The trees leaned too far inward like they were listening, and now the boy, barefoot, shirtless, scraped and bleeding, ran through them like the devil himself was behind him. He didn't scream, he didn't cry, he didn't dare, because she was behind him, and she was crying enough for both of them. Sobs echoed through the trees, wet, gurgling sobs that sounded too close, too human, and too hollow. He turned once. That was his mistake. For a moment, just a moment, he saw her, floating, pale dress soaked in dirt, no face, just 2 rivers of blood weeping down a smooth surface where eyes should have been. Her mouth was nothing, her wails were everything. He froze, a single rule, don't move, but the tears poured louder, louder. He whimpered, his knees buckled. Then nothing. No sound, no boy, just a dark shape flickering between trees, drifting back toward the town of Warder's Hollow. The silence in Warder's Hollow was never peaceful. It was the kind that crept into your bones, thick, watching, waiting. The kind that felt more like something had stopped breathing than everything simply being still. Even the birds knew better than to sing here after dusk, especially near the old cemetery that slumped just past the dead trees on the edge of town. Eli knew that silence well. He'd grown up with it, lived beside it. Every time the wind passed through the rotted fence posts around Hollowfield Cemetery, it moaned like something alive, something buried deep and furious to be forgotten. He stood there now, just outside the crooked gate. The iron sign that read Hollowfield groaned softly as it swayed in the windless dark. Beside him, Marin adjusted the strap on her shoulder, jaw clenched tight. "You sure about this?" she whispered. "No," Eli replied, eyes never leaving the gate. "But it's the anniversary." From behind, Lyriel exhaled, her breath puffing in the chill air. 10 years, she said. It doesn't feel like that long. They stepped through the gate together. The path that led to the center of the cemetery was overgrown and uneven, gnarled roots breaking through the earth like fingers clawing their way out. Headstones stood at odd angles, some with names washed away entirely, others split down the middle like something had tried to burst out from beneath. The willow tree stood like a sentinel in the middle. It had grown since they last stood before it, but still leaned to one side, hunched like a guilty thing. Its limbs drooped low, brushing the mossy ground. That was where it had happened. The box, the crying, the start of all of it. Marin was the first to speak again. "We never should have touched it," no one argued. Back then, they'd only been 8, a dare, a rusted shovel, and a night that was never supposed to mean anything more than kids being dumb in a graveyard. But they had found it, under the willow tree, a wooden box bound in black iron and sealed with a crimson wax that looked too fresh. And when they opened it, everything changed. There had been a relic inside, a jagged obsidian cross sharp enough to cut skin, and a slip of paper with symbols they couldn't understand, until the paper crumbled to ash in Lyrael's hands. That night, the crying had started, and it had never stopped. They never told anyone. Who would believe 3 kids? No one saw the woman the way they did. No one heard her weeping in the walls or saw her standing at the edges of school windows. But people started to disappear. First pets, then neighbors, then friends, always after the crying, always without a trace. And Warder's Hollow changed. People didn't stay out late anymore. Curtains were always drawn. No one spoke about the cemetery, or the willow tree, or her. Eli stepped closer to the tree now. The earth beneath it felt soft, too soft, like it hadn't truly closed, like something still waited below. He knelt and placed a hand on the ground, cold, wet, wrong. "She's not done," Lirel said behind him, her voice barely above a breath. She's still angry, and she remembers. Eli nodded. Then we find the box. Marin looked at him sharply. You think it's still here? No, but someone has it. Someone who knows what it is. He turned to face them. We have to find it before she finds someone else. Liriel swallowed. Someone else, like Cam. The name hit like a stone. Camden Holt had been the last person they talked to about the box. It was 2 summers ago. He believed them. Even said he saw her once outside his basement window, fingers pressed to the glass, and then gone. One morning, his room was empty. No signs of struggle, no goodbye, and the crying had been louder than ever that night. Eli stood, brushing dirt from his hands. We started the church, the archives. Someone in this town knows what we found. Maybe they've always known. Liriel shivered and looked up at the willow. Why us? Because we opened the box, Marin said. We let her out. They turned to leave, but as they reached the gate, Liriel froze. Eli followed her gaze. At the far end of the cemetery, through the veil of willows, a figure stood, pale, unmoving. No eyes, no mouth, just a smooth, dripping mask of flesh. She didn't move, didn't cry. Not yet. Marin grabbed Liriel's hand. Don't move, she breathed, but it was already too late. The first sob broke the air like thunder. Liriel didn't sleep anymore, not really, not since that night at the willow tree. She would lay still, unmoving, beneath the covers in her narrow upstairs bedroom, listening, eyes open in the dark, listening for her, for it. For the crying, it always started the same, a soft sound like wind seeping in through the walls, then a wet gasp, ragged and choked from the corner of the room, and then the sobbing, louder, closer, soaked in grief so deep it bled through the air and into your bones. She knew better than to look, knew better than to even shift under the blanket. That was the rule. Don't look, don't move. Some nights it was easier. The sound stayed outside, somewhere beyond the woods, beyond the fields. But last night it had been inside. She had felt her breath on her cheek. Now, the morning sun barely reached the town of Warder's Hollow. It filtered through the mist like sickly yellow syrup. The sky remained gray, bloated with unshed rain. Liriel sat beside Marin and Eli in the old church basement, flipping slowly through brittle pages from Warder's Hollow's archived town records. Dust coated the shelves like ash. Anything? Marin asked, eyes darting across a column of obituaries. Liriel shook her head. Mostly births, deaths, wedding bands. Some of these go back to the 1800s, but nothing that says anything about a box or a woman. Eli didn't answer. He stood in front of a framed charcoal drawing mounted in the corner, an ancient portrait of the town founders. 9 figures, all in black, eyes cold. One of them was a woman, her face blurred by age and dust, but her shape unmistakable. Her name was Lillian Mayer, he said, the town midwife. Accused of witchcraft in 1871, Marin looked up. How do you know that? He tapped the brass plate beneath the portrait. The inscription was nearly unreadable, but the name was still clear. Liriel stood and moved closer. Do you think she's the one? She fits the timing, Eli murmured. And the box, it looked older than anything I've ever seen. But why us? Marin asked. Why now? Why come back? Liriel exhaled, voice distant. Maybe she never left. A crack of thunder rolled outside, distant and low. Eli closed the dusty book in his hands and turned toward them. Then we need to find the relic, the obsidian cross. It did something to her that night. Marin nodded, thoughtful. Cam had it last, before he disappeared. Liriel tensed. What if someone took it from him? The thought hung in the air like smoke. Someone in town, someone who knew, someone who let her feed. They left the church before sunset. No one lingered after dark anymore. Not here, not since the crying started taking more than sleep. As they walked through town, everything felt off. The air had an edge. People moved too quietly, too fast. Windows shut the moment they passed. Curtains twitched. No one spoke. Not a single bird chirped. Lyriel turned her head as they passed Ms. Lamia's bakery. The glass display cases were empty, the lights off. That night, the sobbing started earlier. Lyriel lay still, eyes open. A draft rolled through the room even though her windows were closed. A soft creak came from the closet. Then, footsteps, slow, bare, wet. They came to the side of her bed and stopped. She held her breath, eyes fixed on the ceiling. She could feel it. Her, the shape, tall, thin, bent like her bones had been shattered and mended wrong. The sobbing began. Not loud, not sharp, just heartbreak, raw and endless. She smelled the rot, the dampness of old earth, and under it, iron, blood, then, whispering, soft and shattered, like someone trying to speak with no mouth. The crying rose suddenly, a sharp gasp of agony. Then it stopped. Everything went still. Lyriel lay paralyzed, skin ice cold. Long minutes passed. Then from the hallway, a single floorboard creaked. She wasn't alone. Eli jolted upright in bed, drenched in sweat. Something had woken him. A shriek, maybe, or a cry. Then his phone buzzed. Lyriel, she was here. Marin, so was she. My window, just standing there. I didn't move. She left. Eli, something's getting worse. She's everywhere now. No one replied for a long time. Then Lyriel's final message lit the screen. Lyriel, I think someone is helping her. I saw a mark in the bakery window, same symbol from the box. Eli stared at the text. Slowly, he got out of bed and looked out his window. The fog was thick tonight, but through it, faint and still, he could see a figure standing in the middle of the road, not moving, not facing him, weeping. The fog didn't lift in the morning. It hung like a curse, low, choking, dulling the sun until it felt like the sky had forgotten how to rise. Everything was muted. Even the color of the town seemed drained, the trees gray, the houses pale, the streets the color of old bones. Eli hadn't slept. He hadn't moved since seeing her in the road. He'd watched her for nearly 20 minutes. She never turned around, never stepped closer, just stood there, still, weeping, until, without warning, she simply vanished, melted into the mist like breath into glass. He hadn't dared move until the sky lightened. Now he sat at the kitchen table, half-dressed, hands shaking around a chipped coffee mug. His mother had left early, again. The note by the stove said, "Shift at the clinic, lock the doors tonight." Everyone in Warder's Hollow had learned to leave notes like that, like they all knew what was out there, like she was a fact, like rain or rot. At noon, the three of them met behind the old post office, hidden from the main road, their voices low and fast, like the fog might be listening. "I saw her," Eli said, "right outside my house. Marin's face was pale, freckles standing out like bruises. She tried to come through my window. I heard the glass groan." "She was in my room," Lyriel said, barely audible. "I didn't look, I couldn't, but she whispered something. I swear to God, I could hear her trying to speak. Her breath was so close it felt like she was within me." Eli swallowed. "We need to find the box, or the relic, something, before she stops giving warnings." Marin hesitated. "What if we're already out of time? They paused, surrounded by the creaking woods and the hush of a town trying to pretend it wasn't rotting from the inside. Lyrael suddenly leaned forward. "I didn't tell you something." "What?" Eli asked. "The spiral I saw in the bakery window. It's not the only one." She dug into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. On it, she'd drawn 3 symbols, crude spirals, each with sharp teeth in the center, like an eye. "I saw one scratched into a tree behind the church, and another carved into the side of the old laundromat near Marlowe's pond." Eli frowned. "Those are places where people disappeared." Marin went still. Lyrael nodded. "They're markers. Whoever's helping her, they're marking the feeding grounds." Marin's voice trembled. "So we're not just haunted, we're being hunted." That night, the crying started before midnight. Eli didn't wait. He slipped out the back door with a flashlight, a crowbar, and a purpose. If the spiral at the laundromat meant someone had helped her there, maybe they left something behind, a sign, a message, or maybe even the box. The old building stood like a forgotten tooth, crooked and crumbling, half swallowed by ivy and rot. Inside, the machines were long dead. The air smelled of mildew and copper, and something else. Mourning, it clung to the walls, heavy, stifling. Eli moved slowly, light sweeping across broken tiles, shattered glass. His breath came shallow, fogging the beam. Then he saw it. Behind the last machine, etched deep into the concrete wall, another spiral, bigger, carved with something jagged, and beneath it, barely visible, a line of words written in what looked like dried blood. "Don't look, don't move, don't remember." His flashlight flickered, and then he heard it. A wet gasp, not behind him, not in front of him, above him. He froze. A sob slipped from the ceiling, soft, slippery, like a throat torn open and trying to breathe. He didn't move. He didn't blink. Then a droplet hit his cheek, thick, warm, tears. He could feel her above him now, hanging, hovering, spine bent backward, limbs twisted like wet rope. "Don't move, don't move, don't." A hand brushed the top of his head. He stopped breathing. For a long, terrible second, nothing happened. And then she screamed, a sound like bones shattering underwater, a cry so loud the walls rattled, the machines shuddered, his flashlight burst in his hand, plunging him into a lightless hell. He ran. He didn't look. He didn't stop. He hit the street gasping, blood trickling from his ears. Lyrael and Marin were already waiting by his porch when he arrived, drenched in sweat and sobs. "She was there," he said, collapsing to his knees, "right above me." Lyrael dropped beside him, gripping his arms. "You saw a spiral?" "Yes." Marin turned to her bag, pulled out a folder. Then, "We're right." She threw open a map of Warder's Hollow. Circles had been drawn across it, red ink, 7 spirals, each where someone had vanished, each where the weeping was loudest. In the center of the spirals, the old well, long abandoned, cemented over, forgotten, until now. Lyrael whispered it first. "That's where she was buried." And Marin added, "That's where the box is." But Eli shook his head. "No," he said, voice trembling. "That's not where the box is." They stared at him. Eli looked up, horror dawning across his face. "Someone in town took it. A long time ago. They dug her up, set her loose, marked the spiral sites." Marin's lips parted. "Who?" Eli's voice cracked. "I think it's someone who's been protecting her, feeding her." Lyrael looked over her shoulder as a low moan echoed across the fields. The crying had started again, but this time, It was everywhere. Warder's Hollow didn't breathe anymore. By now, half the town was silent. Homes shuttered, businesses closed. The fog thickened day by day, and the air felt weighted with invisible chains. People only spoke in murmurs, eyes darting toward the tree lines. Some began boarding up windows, others simply disappeared. The only ones still searching for answers were the three who started it all: Lyriel, Marin, Eli. And something in the air was starting to turn against them. It started with the faces, familiar ones. Townsfolk they'd known since childhood. Mrs. Dray from the library, the old crossing guard who used to hand out butterscotch candies, even Father Kells from the chapel, all now looked different. Too still, too cold, smiling with their lips but not their eyes, as if they knew something, as if they'd already given in and watched her, watched them. That night, the three gathered in Lyriel's basement, maps sprawled out before them, spirals marked in red ink now converging with frantic desperation. "She's closing in on something," Marin whispered, pointing to the center. "Or someone," Eli added, circling the old Everhart house. The house had once belonged to Mayor Abram Everhart, an enigmatic man who'd passed away under mysterious circumstances 5 years ago. The place was now empty, boarded up, but Lyrael remembered something her mother said once during a wine-drunken ramble. That man had secrets stacked in that attic, things no one should have kept, things that whispered. Now, standing outside the house just past midnight, the teens felt the air change again, colder, thick with static. "She's here," Marin whispered, "somewhere close." The house loomed before them, more shadow than structure, its peaked roof jagged against the cloud-choked sky. The front door opened without a sound, as if waiting. Inside, time felt wrong. Dust hung frozen in beams of moonlight. The furniture remained untouched, but nothing was right. The air didn't smell of mildew or wood rot, it smelled of grief, old, soaked into every wall. Eli led them up the creaking stairs, his flashlight a trembling spear in the dark. The attic door was at the end of the hallway, locked, but the lock was broken clean from the inside. He hesitated, then pushed. The attic was massive, the walls sloped in sharp angles, covered in shelves of books, boxes, jars of preserved things long dead. A single light bulb dangled from the ceiling, swaying slightly, but in the far corner someone sat in an old rocking chair, not moving. Eli froze. "Hello?" The chair creaked, the figure stirred, an old man, hunched and skeletal, pale skin pulled tight like wax, but his eyes were alive, wide, wild, and wet with tears. He looked at them, trembling. "You shouldn't be here." Lyrael stepped forward, careful. "You knew her, didn't you?" His head tilted slowly. "I fed her," he whispered. Marin gasped. He looked down, his hands shaking. "She weeps because she remembers, and so must we. The deal was made, long ago, long before your time." Eli stepped closer. "The box, do you have it?" The man didn't answer, just rocked. She said the tears were never meant to stop. That morning was her gift. So long as Warder's Hollow mourns, it will never change, never forget, never forgive. Lyrael's voice cracked. "You let her kill." He laughed, hollow and broken. "I did worse. I called her." Then he looked up, right at Lyrael. "They buried her in the well, but not before she cursed the town, bound her grief to a shape. That shape is herself, a scream that never ends." Marin stepped back, voice trembling. "The relic! Give it to us!" The old man wept silently, then reached beneath the rocker and pulled out a wooden box, small and soaked in dark stain. The spiral burned into the lid. Lyrael reached for it, but the man grabbed her wrist. "She will never stop," he hissed, "unless one of you joins her, unless one of you takes the sorrow." Then, without warning, his eyes rolled back and he slumped forward. Dead. No gasp, no twitch, just gone. The light bulb above them burst, and from outside, far but drawing closer, they heard it, the weeping, so loud it shook the window panes. Eli grabbed the box, and they ran, down the stairs, out the door, into the street, but the town was no longer asleep. People stood in their windows, unmoving, watching, tears rolling down their faces, and in the mist behind them, just before the fog swallowed her again, they saw her. She weeps, tall, twisted, faceless, waiting. They didn't sleep that night. The box sat unopened on Lyriel's dining room table, its presence wrong in a way none of them could explain. The spiral burned into the wood seemed to shift in the corner of their eyes. Move, breathe. Every time one of them got near it, they heard faint weeping, not from the box. From inside their own heads, Eli finally broke the silence. "We have to open it." Marin was pacing. "What if it lets her out?" Lyriel stared at the thing like it might bite. "She's already out." Eli reached forward and flipped the latch. The box opened without sound. Inside lay a small object, no bigger than a locket. A black iron spiral, the size of a coin, crusted in old blood and something darker. It pulsed faintly, as if alive, and beneath it, a note, handwritten, faded. "The one who carries sorrow must pierce the heart of the weeping, but sorrow must be taken willingly. Only then may the mourning end." Marin stepped back, horror dawning across her face. "It's a weapon, but it needs a sacrifice." Lyriel closed the box. "We have to go to the well." That night, they walked in silence toward the old cemetery. The woods around it were twitching with unnatural sound, things shuffling just beyond the edge of the flashlight's reach. Leaves didn't rustle here. They hissed. The moon was nowhere. Only clouds. The stars refused to look down on Warder's Hollow. At the far edge of the graveyard, past the crumbled fence, they found it. The old well. It was taller than they remembered. Cemented over decades ago, the stone had cracked in jagged ways, like something inside had tried to claw out. Moss covered its rim like rotting velvet. And spirals, dozens of them, had been carved into the stones around it. New, fresh. Marin whispered, "She was never buried, she was bound." Eli placed the box at the edge of the well. The iron spiral inside began to hum, a low vibrating sound like teeth grinding underwater, and from the trees they heard her. She was coming. They could hear her sobbing in every direction, surrounding them, closing in. Lyriel clutched her head. "It's within me, her grief. It's within me." Eli looked at her. "The relic needs sorrow, right? Maybe that's how she feeds. Maybe that's how she kills." Marin knelt beside the well, her voice tight with dread. "This was never about just killing her. It's about someone taking her place, someone accepting the mourning." Lyriel looked down at the box, at the note, then at her friends. "I can do it," she whispered. "I've always felt her, longer than you both, since we found the box. She's been in my dreams, my bones." "No," Eli snapped. "We'll find another way." "There isn't another way," she said softly. "It's me or everyone else. She's growing stronger. Soon she'll haunt more than this town." The crying grew louder. A shape emerged at the edge of the trees. Her. Tall, crooked, arms like wet ropes, a veil of hair where a face should be. She stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Eli reached into the box, grabbed the spiral. It burned his hand, but he held it out to Lyriel. Her fingers closed over it. She turned, stepped to the well, and looked into the cracked cement cap. Then she whispered something so low neither of them could hear, and plunged the relic into her own chest. She didn't scream, she only wept, a perfect mirror of the thing that now stood 10 feet away, watching. The weeping woman let out a scream, not of rage but of relief, like a centuries-old pain being pulled from her like rot from a wound. She staggered and vanished into dust. The spirals on the ground turned black, faded. The fog began to lift. The wind moved again, and Lyrael collapsed beside the well. Eli and Marin caught her, alive, but changed. Her face was wet with tears that would not stop. Her voice, soft and distant, said only, "I remember everything." But not all was over. Because the next night, while Marin tried to sleep, she saw something in her window. Not Lyrael, not the weeping woman, but Father Kells, eyes bleeding, weeping, his mouth twisted in a silent scream. He was holding the box. Warder's Hollow awoke to sunlight the next morning, real sunlight. No fog, no weeping in the wind, no missing persons. The townspeople emerged slowly, blinking like moles coming into the light, their confusion thick and heavy. They looked at each other differently now, as if unsure what parts of the nightmare had been real and what parts had been dreamt. But the three of them knew. Marin, Eli, Lyrael, except Lyrael wasn't really Lyrael anymore. She didn't cry that morning. She didn't speak either. She only stared at her hands, sat outside under the elm trees for hours, unmoving. When birds landed near her, they didn't fly away. When people passed her on the sidewalk, they stepped wide, too wide, as if sensing something wasn't right, and it wasn't. The relic had pierced her but not killed her. It had made her the vessel. The Sorrowkeeper. The one to carry the weeping woman's grief, to contain her. The town was free because someone now held the pain, but pain that massive can't be buried forever. It leaks. That night, Marin stayed at Lyrael's house. She couldn't sleep. Not after the vision of Father Kells, not after she found the box on her windowsill, empty except for one thing, a piece of paper, in Lyrael's handwriting. She is not gone, she is quiet, but she weeps in me, and I can feel her watching you now. Meanwhile, Eli was dreaming, only he wasn't asleep. He walked the streets of Warder's Hollow in a fog-like trance, barefoot, his eyes open but empty, drawn by something. A whisper, a sob in the wind only he could hear. He stopped at the cemetery, stared at the well. Except it wasn't sealed anymore. The cap had been shattered, shoved aside as if by a great force. And inside, beneath the moss and earth, something moved. A shape, a face, not Lyrael's. Something older, hungrier. The moment Eli leaned closer, a gust of foul wind burst from the well, knocking him backward. He hit the ground hard and gasped awake, soil in his mouth, his hands bleeding. Above him, on the cracked stone rim of the well, was a single word carved freshly. Traitor. The next few days passed in a suffocating silence. Lyrael didn't eat, didn't cry anymore. The tears had run dry. Instead, she sat in the old chapel, the same place where the town held her birthday party each year, now hollowed out, dusty, forgotten. The pews creaked when she moved. But not alone. People came, one by one. They didn't say a word. They just sat with her and cried. Sometimes for hours, sometimes until they collapsed from exhaustion, as if drawn by something inside her, as if something old was speaking through her grief. Marin called it the pull, and she hated it. Something's feeding again, she told Eli. We didn't stop her, we just replaced her. Eli agreed, but said nothing because something had been gnawing at him too. The box was back, but with something new inside. Not the relic, but a sliver of Lirel's hair, still wet with tears, and a note, this one not in Lirel's handwriting. Not even in English, just symbols, spirals, crossed by vertical tears, over and over and over. Eli dropped it and backed away like it had burned him. He heard something whisper then, so faint he couldn't tell if it came from behind him or inside his own head. One keeper falls, one must rise. On the 6th night, Marin had a dream. She stood alone in the chapel, candles melted down to wax puddles, no pews, just her and Liriel sitting in the middle. But Liriel's face was blank now, porcelain, cracked. She looked up. No more crying. Then her mouth stretched wide and 1,000 voices poured out, all crying, all screaming, all pleading. Marin woke up choking on air. Something was wrong. She called Eli. No answer. She biked to Liriel's house, but Liriel was gone. In her place, standing in the front yard in a torn church dress, was Marin's mother, eyes closed, weeping, holding the box. The rain hadn't touched Warder's Hollow in days, but the sky wept anyway. Dark clouds hung like gauze above the rooftops as Marin stood outside Liriel's house, staring at her mother. Her mother wasn't supposed to be there. She'd died 2 years ago, a heart attack, fast, unquestioned. But there she was now, alive, weeping, cradling the box as if it were a newborn. "Mom?" Her eyes were shut. Her lips moved slowly, mouthing something again and again. No sound came out. Marin stepped forward. Her mother opened the box. Empty. Then she whispered, "The sorrow must pass on, my love." The church bells rang. No one had pulled the cord in over a decade. The sound echoed like thunder. Marin ran down the street, past the blackened well, into the chapel. Candles lined the pews. And at the center, standing, arms open like a puppet on strings, was Liriel. But it wasn't her, not anymore. Her skin was pale, cracked down the sides of her mouth, and eyes like glass, splitting under pressure. Her dress hung in tatters, but the worst part was her face. She had no eyes. Just tear tracks, endless trails carved like rivers down a faceless mask. Eli stood beside her. He turned to Marin. His hands were shaking. "I had to," he said, trembling. She told me. The relic doesn't kill her, it only moves her, transfers the mourning. It has to be fed. Someone has to give it a name." "What are you talking about?" Marin hissed, backing up. Eli looked ashamed. She needed someone new. Behind them, Liriel moved, slowly, floating rather than walking, arms raised. "She doesn't just take grief, Marin," Eli said, eyes glassy. "She needs someone to choose the next keeper, someone to offer her another soul, a friend." Marin froze. "You gave her me." "I'm sorry." Then everything shattered. The candles burst, wind howled through the chapel, and Liriel let out a sound so deep it split the wood beneath their feet. Marin dropped. Darkness. When she opened her eyes, she was inside the well, but it was no longer a well. It was a room, circular, walls covered in carvings of faceless figures, thousands of spirals, all bleeding, all weeping, and at the center, the first box, older, massive, covered in chains made of hair and bone. It pulsed with something ancient, and someone sat beside it. Father Kells, alive, but wrong. One of his eyes was gone, his chest stitched up like a rag doll, his hands raw with cuts. He smiled at her. "I've kept her safe for years," he whispered. "I gave her names when no one else would. Helped the sorrow keep moving. The town thrived in exchange, a small price." "Why me?" Marin said, her voice a whisper. He smiled wider. "Because Lyrael loved you, and love—" He touched the spiral on the box, now glowing red. "Is the deepest wound." She tried to move. Chains pulled her arms tight. The relic floated before her. It was no longer iron. It was bone, and it wept. Above ground, no one remembered Marin the next day. She had vanished. A missing poster appeared, then faded. Eli left town. Lyrael remained, now walking the streets again, quiet, eyes black, tears dry. But when children pass her house, they cry without knowing why. And somewhere, beneath Warder's Hollow, the spiral continues to turn. There is no end to sorrow, it only wears new faces. I see hers in mirrors now, and I don't recognize mine. Marin. The end. Or maybe not. Because sorrow never dies. It only waits.